G'day folks. Well, I want to have a talk about how I've sort of learnt over the years to tune this. I sort of want to, just give you a bit of an idea and an understanding into it, especially the ones that are sort of half keen and want to learn, and maybe you've just got your project underway and you sort of want a bit of an understanding on it. And I sort of, my experience that I've had with it in the last sort of 5 years has been, it's what you want really at the end of the day. I know there's a lot of guys running E85 and they're really having great success, and at the end of the day it's what fuel you can sort of get readily available and what sort of horsepower you sort of want to push. For me, and we'll go back a little bit on it. You see, 4 or 5 years ago I had no friggin' idea on what I was doing. Basically, I sort of did some learning, you tube things and you sort of learn. But I was very fortunate enough to set it up right the first time. I had a few little niggly issues with fueling. Fuel pressure wasn't rising, and sort of blew a few head gaskets and sort of learned what the cause was, which was nothing really. It was fairly basic what was causing it. It just wasn't referencing any signal to the regulator. That's basically what it was. And once I sort of got that established and my fuel pressure rise, I sort of went on this journey of, right, I'm going to do this myself, and dived right deep into it and get a real understanding of it. And it's something you either do it yourself or you go and pay someone else to do it, tune your car. I'm lucky enough that I've sort of kept it old school, and I really like this old school way about it, because you can, to tune this, you've got to physically tune it. You've got to get out the spanner and you've got to adjust your timing. Once you've sort of played around and closed the gap down on the distributor, everything's sort of mechanical on it. There's nothing, you don't plug a laptop to it and tune away. So this is really like an apprenticeship for me, for tuning and understanding of your setup and motor. Now, I found that one of the big things with whatever tune you sort of got, because I circuit race this, heat. Heat has a huge impact on the way this sort of runs. And I mean that in the sense of power too. Years ago, and I only found this out when I pulled that motor apart and put them alloy heads on it and got it prepped up for this in here now. I'm not sure, it's about 7 or 8, maybe 10 videos back, I showed you where, when I pulled the cast heads off it, that I'd actually started to egg a head gasket. Now, I remember really distinctly there one time I was down at Simmons and it was up around 30 degrees, the weather, and I was on my sort of 3rd lap, and the temperature of the engine, it just suddenly, well not suddenly, but it just kept building up, and by the time I was on my 3rd lap, I was up around 240 Fahrenheit, and that's sort of really getting up into the dangerous level. But I had one more lap to go, and I didn't want to stop and ease off. But what happened was the power fell away big time, and when I say big time, it must have been around. Well, they reckon it takes around sort of 20-ish horsepower for you to feel the difference, whether it's dropped away. Well, it really dropped away, and I'm guessing, anywhere from 50, 80 horsepower just fell away. And what happened was, the timing that I had set was too high. you can't just pull timing out of it at will. It's a locked system. It's sort of 13, 20 degrees. So I've got 7 degrees of advancement. And it was too much. So what was happening, I was starting to, well, the ignition timing was going off too soon for those conditions. So the fuel was at the maximum point where it was just starting to burn too quick. So I needed to delay it a few degrees, 4, 5, whatever degrees, to settle it down again. And that's what I mean when you pull timing out. If I could have delayed that bit of timing, at that given time, it wouldn't have pushed the gasket, and that's what I was coming to. I never got to the point of detonation, but I was getting to the point where the fuel was exploding too quick, because it does take a certain amount of time depending on temperature. The lower the temperature, the slower the burn. So the fuel was at that point where it was happening too quick for that certain timing that I had set, hence push the gasket. So that told me that, and I later found that out, that heat is a killer. You need it for the turbo, but you don't need it in the engine. You try and get rid of heat, and that's where the horsepower is made. So this is why I've gone to the water meth, and I've pulled that intercooler out so I can give the actual engine itself a real chance to stay cool, and the water methanol injection will keep the cylinder pressures, or the cylinders, under a very stable, controlled environment, to a point where I can go up in timing and make a little bit more power. So it's going to be a great thing for circuit racing. If I was just say playing around on the street, I probably wouldn't have touched that. I would have left it, and it actually worked really well on the street. Drag racing even, it would have been a great setup for that. Mind you, there would have been a limitation on power levels. There's only so much an intercooler can cool. But as far as keeping a lid on things, it would have been actually a good setup for that. So, and that's what I'm saying, guys. Circuit racing's completely different to drag racing. I drag raced for a few years. Oh, not for a few years, but on and off for a couple of years. And it was only in NA form, but it's amazing what you can get away with. I remember I had my old brown ute, and I did a few runs in this, and the radiator in it was absolutely terrible, blocked up, and it'd only just keep a lid on it, cruising along the street, like cruising to the track. It'd only just. So it's not really that big a deal, like with your cooling system. You're just not pushing the car long enough to create heat. You can come back, cool it down, and by the time you do your run, it's really no issue. But for what I do now, oh look, that is number one for me, is keeping the heat at bay, getting rid of the heat. You really need to get rid of it for a boosted engine to survive, and that's been the biggest challenge. And I'm really getting on top of it now, but yeah, it's been a real battle. But and that's sort of taken me on that journey of really learning. If you've been an NA setup, your big camshaft and your really big, decent heads. I would have had the heads all seen. To make sort of 500-600 horsepower, you've still got to cool it, but it's the torque of the turbo. It pushes into what makes a V8 really torquey. It's all heat. You got to get rid of it. So this has really been the biggest challenge. Even though I've mounted the turbo out the back, and that's got rid of that heat, but it's up the front. Like just the sheer torque of the boost, and I love it, but you really have to build your setup around cooling, and that's been the biggest challenge. So yeah, I just sort of, what you guys are seeing me do is not necessarily what you would do for drag racing. or street. This is sort of, yeah, different sort of setup. I'm really trying to combat heat, you know, because it really does plague you, and that's why I'm sort of turning to, you know, by pulling that intercooler out. It wasn't that I wasn't happy with the power, it was just I needed to keep a lid on everything, and it was sort of my opportunity, and once I sort of learnt to that next level, was to, yeah, run the water methanol and give the radiator up the front a chance to really cool itself, you know, or really cool the engine. And yeah, that's what sort of, this is why I've sort of taken a different approach to it all, guys. And yeah, I just hope you're enjoying my journey. It's a real, I've got a real thirst for it, I really have. And my next video, I want to sort of talk about different fuels and their benefits and sort of some of their drawbacks, because I've been watching actually another, and I'll put the link up in the comments, is a brilliant little channel I've subscribed to, and they do a lot of testing versus E85, ethanol fuels, C85, through to gasoline fuels, C16, all that, and they go and do testing on water methanol and as a injection, and it's really interesting, quite surprising actually. So I want to sort of talk about that, and yeah, and I probably want to explain why I've sort of stuck with 98 with the water methanol too. So yeah, alright folks, well I hope you're sort of enjoying my little journey along developing the car. I feel I'm really starting to nail in on it, and it's really fantastic, it is. I've just sort of got to a point in my life where things are starting to really click with it now, and I think I'm getting on top of it, guys, but we'll see. I'm keen to take it down next Sunday, give it a shakedown run, and yeah, I'll try and set up, I really want someone to sort of do me some filming on the outside too, like when it's zipping past, and that's quite, I haven't had the chance for anyone to grab the camera, or anyone decent enough to sort of hold it really still. It's a real challenge, but we'll see what I can do, and yeah, we'll go from there. Alright folks, well I'll catch you later.